All right, it's recording now. Okay, so this photo was taken in Dubuque last fall, right outside this cathedral where our event is hosted. And it was right at sunset, and everybody has probably seen the photograph that we're going to be painting from. I hope that's the case. Let me get down through here and find my image that I'm going to work with. There it is. One more. There we go. Okay, so you can see what it looks like. I'll just set it right there for the moment here. Although it doesn't look like it here, this is a very yellow tinted sky. So what I'm going to do is start up here. I'm going to wet the entire surface, lay in a wash of cad yellow on there, and just let that kind of migrate and work its way down. And that will impact all these colors that you see down here. There's not a lot. It's really a lot of grays. But when we lay some violet over that, you're going to see some really nice interaction between the yellow and that violet. And I want to draw your attention. Hopefully that will show up here. Can you see that orange stripe right alongside that steeple or the spire on that church? That's the interaction you're getting between that yellow sky back there and the violeted gray on that steeple. You get that little orange halo going around there. So if you can include that, that will help your painting be stronger. You'll also see that although it doesn't show up real well in this photograph, there is a bit of that orange going around the tops of these trees here, as well as those power lines back there, which let's see if I can find where the camera is at. Those power lines, if you put those in, they are orange too. They are not a gray or black. So, and they just do a nice job. So let me take and lay that in there like that. A little bit of blue tint coming out of that water, but that's not going to hurt anything. So you can see I'm laying moisture over everything. I don't remember if I mentioned this, but right there is the headlight on a vehicle, as well as here's some street lights, and then headlight here. And so I put masking fluid over that to preserve the white, but very little masking fluid on this picture. If you didn't mask that out, I think in the body of the email I sent you, I offered that as a suggestion. If you didn't, we do have a tube of white paint, and that works wonders. Okay, so that's nice and wet. I'm going to grab me a brush that is really one of my favorites. This was my mom's watercolor brush, and when she passed away 7 years ago, I got her art supplies, and I dug this out. It's a Liquitex 3/4 Kolinsky Plus, and it just really does a nice job. It's a one stroke. One strokes have longer fibers than just a traditional flat. They also typically have more of a belly to them like that. So they're really a good brush to paint with. You'll see that I do that quite a bit. All right, so I am going to, I'd softened my paints a while ago. And so now I'm getting just a medium yellow. You could call it a cad yellow. Really, any number of yellows would work. Just find one that you like. Yeah, I'm just going to come up here and lay that in. Now I'm using my computer monitor, and so I can see probably what you are seeing, as well as I'm looking at it in real life. And this looks sunshine yellow on my monitor. In reality, it's got more red in it. It's that richer, deeper cad type of yellow. But we all know that it's going to lighten up quite a bit too. So, okay, so just to keep harmony going here, I'm going to carry this yellow all the way down, because that setting sun impacts everything. And when we lay the violets over that, it's not going to really harm it in any way. I find that interesting how much different that yellow is on the screen from what I'm seeing right here in person. Okay, And you can see how that water bubbles up right there. So many ways to do this. And it's not important how you do it. What is important is that you get that excess water off of there, because as this begins to dry, that's going to wick back up and give you a water stain. So I'm just taking a paper towel here, folded it over, and I'm just running it right along the edge of the, you can see over here. See, it's developed again over there. So
I got a question.
okay.
Hey, Larry, by the way. Anyway, that warm, on my screen, I'm on Kathy's, what is it, Chromebook, Kathy? It's a nice warm yellow. So I don't know, the screen looks pretty good to me. Is that warmth that you put over that whole thing? Is that to give the trees and everything? I couldn't see your phone in the picture too well, but is that to give the whole thing a kind of a, even the trees themselves, a warm glow, so everything has sort of a continuity about it? Or is that mainly in the end going to show up in the sky?
Yeah, that's a good word to use, continuity. Because that's adding sun impact to everything that it touches, it will provide a continuity. You'll find that when I'm painting, I use the same colors all around my painting, and that keeps color harmony going. So you may notice a little difference now. I've got this dried, and I'm painting on 140 pound. I'm not sure. I think it's Arches paper, cold press, and it gives you a nice texture. You can probably see some of it going there. So this is lightened up. When we put a color down in watercolor, it will tend to lighten up. I like to say about 50%. That's probably depends on the color that you lay down. But my sky is lightened up, and I might go back in and intensify it if I feel like it needs it. But for right now, I'm happy with what I've got. And so bring this up where you can see it. Again, the yellow in the sky is not showing up. But the next thing I want to do, you see these, what appears to be white, like the turret on that house right there is, to our eye, white. These distant houses back here, the gable end is white. Even Larry's RV down here is white. The road is lighter, obviously, than back here. Okay, all those are not white, they're all blue. So I've mixed up some cobalt blue, and I'm going to just lay that in over everything, just paint that over all these darker silhouetted shapes. And then I will have the middle value, which is the light areas that are actually white, but they appear blue right now. I will have that, and then I'll come back in and develop these darks on top of that. So that's my next step here that I'm going to take. So again, cobalt blue, you could use ultramarine. I'm probably going to put a little bit of alizarin crimson in there too. Just a little bit. Just kind of lean it towards red, and that takes it a little towards orange, which is getting closer to yellow, and ties it in with the sky up there. So let me do this here, and I'm looking at my photograph, and just going back and forth. And this is using my mom's brush again. It's always a nice little feeling. Okay, there's a little, I don't know if you can see it, I think you can. There's a little window up there, so I'm just going to try to quickly paint around that with this big brush. And put a little tap of that right there. I'm not taking extra caution to make sure I get this just right. I'm just kind of getting those shapes in there. I want to keep it kind of loose. And this brush right here, this is a round sable. It's a rosemary brush, works great. You can just lay this stuff in pretty fast. Trees. A lot of times you will see me come back in and add moisture at the top up there, just like that. And you can see how that's bleeding down, creeping down like that. That is exactly what I'm wanting it to do. So it replenishes the moisture up here, buying me time to work on it. And but it's not oversaturating this area. It just keeps working its way down. Because what I hope to do is get all this blue put in and then come in and put a little bit of orange up at the top up there. If I do everything the way I'm planning on it, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Now I can do this two different ways. I can put all the blue in, which would be okay, or I can, you see how heavily saturated that is there. So I can stop and know that I can come back in here where this is wet and pick it up, and I won't have a line going across there. I'm going to grab a little bit of this orange and just pop it in right here at the top. And that'll kind of give me that glow that I'm looking for. Remember, I'm going to come back over this with a darker color. And you can do it in the trees. You can do it along the buildings if you want. Like I probably should have done it right there. That one's still a little bit wet.
Forgive me for talking for a second, but it's interesting how that lightened it when you did that as well.
Right in here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's this is core transparent pyro orange. It's really powerful color, and it just drives everything else out. It just takes over. And experience is the only thing that'll teach you that. You know, you got to work with a particular color, a particular brand before you know for sure what's going to happen, or have a pretty good idea anyway.
Very cool.
All right. Let me go ahead and get the rest of this laid in here real quick. And if anybody else has a comment, something you'd like to say, that you're welcome to. For whatever reason, Niall, your picture did not pop up on my screen here. Just your voice came through, which is ideal.
Lucky you.
Lucky, well, yeah. I am lucky to have all of you spending your afternoon with me. We can't get out and paint together, but we can do this together.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can see the values that we need to reach for how dark I've got to go. These right here, I think, are going to work out well to be the, the blues that I was talking about over here. So I think I'm in pretty good shape there. Going to need some stronger contrast up in here, obviously, and stronger contrast in these trees. But what I'll do is come down and negatively paint that dark around the gable ends of those houses there and try to leave that in. But I want to make sure that I don't get too picky with this and get every little window in and such as that. I just want to get the suggestion, the shape of them in there. So let me mix up a good rich dark here. I want to lean it again towards violet, because the violet against this yellow is going to make the yellow appear brighter. And the reason for that is because they're opposite on the color wheel. And so anytime you take color wheel opposites, you get not only a vibrancy, but they, I can't think what the word is that they use. It's like an electricity. What's the word I'm looking for, Niall?
Saturation? I don't know.
No, where they play off the vibration. That makes them vibrate. Vibrancy is real close to it.
Oh yeah.
Yes, my wife just hollered in. She said they complement each other. So
There you go.
all right, okay. So let me mix up a dark here, and I'm going to take some alizarin crimson. Okay, now alizarin, and I like to put phthalo green with it, because you get an almost a black, super rich color. This works really in any medium. I do a lot of acrylic painting, and we'll do the same thing. And a too black is just kind of lifeless. But if you add this phthalo green and alizarin crimson, you get a rich dark that can be very colorful. So let's see here. Okay, so the top of this church here is a copper color. It's a patinaed copper. So I'm just going to leave the color that I've got there. It doesn't have to show up in my painting as that patina, because that's not that important. It's just what's important is that, the viewer looks at that and sees what that is. you know, they know instantly that that's a church. Now, as I'm coming down the steeple, the spire, whatever you want to call it, because that's brick, I'm integrating a little bit of orange, that core transparent pyro orange into it, just a little bit. And there's some lighter areas that are, you know, it's just brickwork up there, little accent pieces of limestone or something like that. Very, a lot of Catholic churches up there in Dubuque, and this may be one of them. I don't recall. Remember, my initial dark was alizarin crimson and phthalo green, and then I added a little bit of orange to it to get this brickish color, and you can really see that showing up. At least on my monitor, it shows up real good. So now I'm trying to get back to violet because I'm getting down low in the building. We're going to be getting some tree shapes going in there, and so I'm just gonna switch it. Okay, as I get over here, there's just in the photograph, and I don't know if anybody printed the photograph out and has it with them where you can look at it, but I'm just seeing some vertical light blue shapes. I have no idea what they are because it's just the facades of a bunch of buildings there, and so I'm just going to let them be in there. I may knock them down. They seem to be a little intense right at the moment. Negatively here around the Warrior. This is Larry's RV, the Warrior there. Okay, so when you're working in watercolor, and I've got this meandering line that I'm working with here, I don't want any of those edges to dry on me because I'll get a crisp edge in there. So, but I need to get up here and get this along the trees going. So I'm gonna be working up in here, but keeping an eye on this. And you see how that's wanting to run right there. I'll just pick up some of that and transfer it up to the top here. So let me get making these trees here. I'm around the peak of that house. Peak of that house. If you've never been to Dubuque, it's well worth a trip up there. Beautiful, beautiful town, and such neat architecture. A lot of old architecture there, and they love their churches too. They're just beautiful. What I should have is some soft background music playing to fill in the gaps. I got another roof line right there. Another one right there. Not really showing up much in my photo at least from the angle I'm looking at it, but it's there. So that's. And this one here, let me switch brushes, get something a little finer tipped than that, what I've got. Switch from my fine point brush to my Kolinsky Sable. Okay, come right down the front of that building there. So I've dropped down here to the very bottom. I did that intentionally because I don't want to risk working my way down and forget where I'm at and then getting into the road. I want to keep that road a lighter value, as well as the tops of the cars. I'm just going to put a couple of oddball features in here just to suggest anything. Now, where I'm working by myself right now in my studio, not filming and not thinking about talking to people, I would probably possibly taped off, or not taped, but masked off the tops of these cars because they have a little highlight. However, if it doesn't work out just the way I want it to, I will grab some white paint and pop them back in there. Okay, that's getting a nice little effect going there. And notice how these cars, you keep them simple, but notice how they're just stacked one over the other. They're basically the same form over and over and over again, because there's just not a lot of difference in so many of these cars that you see out there. You know, a Toyota could pass for a Chevy, could pass for a Ford Taurus, could pass for whatever. Right over here is I don't know, there's one of those yellow diamond road signs. There's an orange sign down in the very bottom and a car behind it. I opted to leave those out because I just didn't think that was necessary. And I say that, but now I'm thinking about putting the highlight of that, the one right behind the orange sign, in like that there. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Not what you want to have happen. That's the nice thing about every time I demo, something messes up on me. Okay, so let me get the shapes of these in here. Put that one like.
See how the master fixes mistakes.
There you go. You find the master, you let me know, okay?
See how cool you are in a crisis.
My life is a crisis. I just do this for punishment and suffering. Okay. And I said I wanted to add this other car, didn't I? So I'm going to put them right about here. See, I'm just sketching with the brush too. It's not a, that's one thing I've learned very powerfully, especially in watercolor. Everybody draws out what they're doing, and then you are locked to it. You're hamstrung. You don't feel like you can change it. Well, if you go into it with the mindset that I'm just going to, the pencil lines are just suggestions of things I want to happen in there. But as I'm developing the painting, if I need to make a change, by all means, sketch out that change with your brush.
Where all of a sudden that the whole thing really is starting to come together really quickly. That it's really.
Now this area down here is working nice. And I'm going to come back in with a darker value over that. This is kind of a mid value right now.
Yeah.
So. Didn't get the arc on that quite the way I wanted it, but
it's just the way you suggested those car shapes. They really read well as cars down there.
Do they? Good, thank you. Another building here of some sort in front of that turret on that other building. Just a quick set of scumbling here in lines, and just run those shapes together there. Okay, let me take and put some more windows in here. I'm moving stuff around. I'm moving windows on this building because they're not going to work like I've got them. And that's okay. You can do that.
Now, what do you mean, Spencer? They don't work. They wouldn't work.
Well, okay, like this window right here was actually over here, but if I put it right there, then it's going to run right into this. I'm sorry if that rotated there. It's going to run right into this roof line and diminish, I think, the appearance of that being a roof line. So I just moved it over a little bit.
Gotcha.
Now it might not make sense because this window here should probably be lined up over that. But most people looking at this are not going to see that if I keep it loose enough.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So let's go over here and attack the warrior here. Put a window across the front of it here.
Are you going to paint Larry inside of there?
I could, but if I did, he'd be sleeping at the wheel right there. Can't believe he's not turned his mic on. He's going to let that one pass.
I think he's double parked there, isn't he?
He's always double parked.
I'm sleeping now. You just woke me up.
Heard your name mentioned, didn't you?
Okay, I'll turn my mic off now.
So you can begin to get the idea here. It's just little shapes that do so much for it. Got the air conditioner up top of the roof right there. I'll put a dark underneath it, like that. And then the underside of the car, or the van, or the RV, whatever you want to call it, has got a shadowed area. And what is important, if you look right here, I'm going to try to capture that. Okay, this highlight under there, there's always almost always a little area of light between the shadow on the underside of the vehicle and the cast shadow on the asphalt or the ground or wherever it's sitting. So if you can get that in there, that'll give you an element of believability in it.
Sounds like another workshop coming on.
It does. There's no end to them.
Cars and the shadows they make.
What's that?
Cars and the shadows they make.
Yes, yes. Let me move back. I'm sorry, I'll have that fixed next time. I won't have the mic or the camera on this end. All right, I see just a couple more things up here to do in the overall scheme of things. And you notice I've switched to that smaller brush so I can make a little more intricate details.
Man, that whole design is looking fantastic. That's really cool. I like all the little chunks of white you left to break up all that dark space. I know you're not done.
Up in there?
Well, everywhere, just the whole thing, just the little shapes that you left that kind of, broke up some of the big shapes. Or the big dark areas where you left some little white, chunks here and there.
Yeah, right down in there and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to come back in and deepen the values on that too. And I'm looking at, like on my monitor, this area here appears to be fairly pale right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as pale as what it looks like on my monitor, but I thought it was interesting, and I think it was you, Niall, commented that the yellow on your screen looked warmer than what I said it looked like on mine. So that's everybody's monitor is going to be set a little differently too.
Sure.
All right, so I'm going to take just a second here to kind of look it over and see if I've got, what my next move is. Put a little bit of an orange spike on top of that. I can go up here, a little bit orange there. Let me talk to you for a second about design. Okay, I've got a little gap right there, which is good, but I'm getting dangerously close to doing a bad design thing. But if I were to run that off, then that's going to isolate this area right here, which is not good. Your viewer could get trapped over there. So anytime you're doing something like this, just make sure you keep enough space between the edge of your painting and whatever it is it's trying to dissect the painting or cut it off, because that can be a big mistake if you're not careful. So anyway, so now I'm going to take and study my photograph here just a little bit. Bring that up where you can see it. And, oh, there we go. That's not too bad. So I just need some deeper values. If you look where the RV is, where my thumb is here, you see how much deeper the trees and the buildings and such that are behind it are. So I need to work on that. To deepen the windshield on it probably, as well as those cars, and define those car shapes a little bit more. And maybe get some fluffier tree shapes going on up in here. So that's what I'm going to be working on next. I'm trying not to lose these lighter areas that I've got here for the houses. I do like this here. This is a nice deep value. Again, on camera, to my eye, on the camera, it appears lighter than it does in person. This is pretty deep over here, maybe almost too deep, but we'll see. Okay, put that brush down. Grab my moppy round brush here. Now, again, I'm going back with the violets, but I'm going to put a little bit of, I think, yellow into it. I'm going to lean the violet towards the blue. And if I put yellow in it, that's going to gray it, but it might give it a little greenish feeling. And that would be really nice. What else would be nice if I had multiple cameras going here so you could see my palette and everything else, but that's for another day, I guess. All right, here we go. Going back for the darks here. Just keeping it loose. Grab some of that orange. Get a nice glow going back in there. There's that. To me, that's working really good right there. This paper's pretty wet. As you see, it's still moving. I haven't dried it since I put that wash in there. Come under there, enhance that window shape. Come up in here with the violet. I'm going to make this look like the top of a tree right there, because these houses are just stacked up the hill in amongst all these trees. Like I said, really beautiful, beautiful little town. A lot of history there. I really have my doubts as whether their paint out event will be going on this year. Hopefully they can make it happen. Just making stuff up as I go, just having holes in there. This right here I don't like, so I'm just going to pretend that's maybe windows or something on that building there. There we go. Because that's still wet, it's just letting the color just gradually creep down, which is really nice. It's a nice feature. Okay, now in my photo, I'm seeing, as I go to this next tree at the very top, up in here, I'm seeing some blue in there. So I just added more cobalt blue. Redefine the top of that tree, that house a little bit. Okay, design-wise, that right there and that right there, there's a lot of symmetry going on. You look in the photograph, you see this tree is quite a bit higher than that one there. Not sure how I missed that originally, but I'm going to make that change right now. Leave a few sky holes peeking through. And then I'm going to grab some of that orange and just pop that in there. And hit that right there. The orange doesn't bother me down there, even though it wasn't my first choice. Okay, going good, going good. I like it. So come down around this house here. And there's a chunk of a house showing there. Just like that. See that? Trying to drip and run. So you got to keep your eye on all the stuff as you're painting, because it will get you. Work on that car there just a little bit. That car there. Now let's try something here. I'm going to take that cad yellow that I used in the sky, and I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm just going to pop it in right here and see if that gives me a greenish cast like I see in the photos. I'm not really. Yeah, on the screen it looks green. In life it looks yellow. I don't normally recommend this, but I'm going to try using a lemon yellow just to see what that does. Yes, while it's all wet, you can see it just diffuses and gets soft. I think it's going to be okay. I think it's going to provide a little bit of color in a otherwise limited color painting. Need a little bit over here. Bring that down. There we go. Okay, bring that down. I just mixed up some more dark. And my dark is phthalo green and alizarin crimson. You can see that's pushing towards green just a little bit there. Okay, now I'm just trying to get some interest and shape differences going there. Look at that. Don't want that to happen. For these lights to pop out here, that's a traffic light, that's headlights on a car. I need some good darks back there. Okay. I am thinking that I'm going to have to come in with some white to redefine these shapes along here, but that is okay. Carry that dark over. That's pulling you right down the street. So I like that. It's always funny as you paint a scene, whether it's from life or whether it is from a photograph, the longer you're studying it and looking at it, the more details start to emerge, stuff you'd never noticed before. Like I didn't even see that roof line there, that gable roof. Okay. All right, now, real quick check here. And I do a comparison of the values between the road and the rest of it. And the road could be quite a bit darker, but it could be bluer too. So I'm going to try something. Risk it all. Just taking some blue. Deepen that road up a little bit. There is some crosswalks in there. There we go. Now that's not just cut off like it was. It's just kind of blending together there, which to me is more believable, reads better. And I'm just seeing different things here that just subtle little maneuvers like that right there. And right there. And then for sure over here, there's too much white right there. Yeah, see that kind of, that's not quite so in your face. It blends in with what's back here. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. If you want to, anybody got a question, want to turn your mic on, you can. And we will, I'm going to go dry this here, but if you guys want to visit for a while or ask me a question, feel free to.
Will you leave the orange of the trees at the top of the buildings?
Say that again, Diane.
Will you leave as much orange on top of the trees there, on top of the buildings?
Possibly. The real question here is, or not real question, but the real observation is, I had meant to do that right there earlier when I put that orange up there, and because I'm wearing producer's hat, filmer hat, actor hat, and everything, I looked at. But that's dry. But now that, to me, that works much better. It's much more believable.
Right.
So, and then again, I'll just reiterate this. Let me get my body out of the way here. You can see how that's puddling up down there. And because this paper is so wet, now when I went in and put the second set of darks in on there, that paper was still very damp, and you could see how it was just kind of creeping down through there. And so that's it's just one of the things. I'm surprised, but the humidity where I live here outside must be pretty high for it to have stopped it from drying like that. So what I want to do is run over here about 10 feet away, run my hair dryer on this, and then I'll come back, and while I'm drying it, it'll give me a chance to look it over and see what needs work done on it. In general, I'm pretty pleased with what I've got going on down in here. This is very loose, very suggestive. It does need some tweaking, some key darks put in places to help support the impression of a vehicle. It needs some key lights put in, to catch the light coming over that bluff, bouncing off the top of them. And then I'll probably at the same time remove the masking fluid, and maybe we'll start putting a little color in. These lights back here were stop lights, and they're in the photo they're actually red. But I'm thinking some phthalo green there, just real light pushed in there, might be a little bit of color relief for, like I said earlier, an otherwise very limited palette, very almost a monochromatic painting.
Can I ask you a quick question, Spencer?
Me?
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
Do you think when you do a painting like this, do you think of it in, do you try to get them done in like so many layers of painting, or do you not think of, do you not, think in those terms?
I'd like to think 3 to 4 layers will do most paintings, and that's generally true. Okay, like the first one is the yellow wash. The second one was the lighter bluish colors in there, and they're not really blue in here, but they're kind of yellowish, but they still work for what I want. Then ideally the third one would be these rich darks. I threw a fourth step in. I kind of put in a muted bluish dark value, mid value, and then the darker value on top of that. So right now we're at, I would say, 4 steps, 4 layers. And the next is just going to be coming in, like I said, refining some of these vehicle shapes with just mark making, as they say. Mark make some dark marks and some light marks, and just a little bit of noodling, refining, and I think it'll be pretty close.
I see.
So 3 to 4 layers is probably good.
Okay. Hey, Larry, can I ask you, is that kind of your typical amount of layers when you do watercolor painting?
I try to, when I'm plein air painting, I try to use as few as possible. I'll try to do my light layer first, but I try to work top to bottom, back to front. So it looks to me like it's crisper and cleaner if I can get those in 1 or 2 layers and be done, get out of it. Otherwise, for me, it looks muddy to me, or my edges start to get too crisp, and I don't know. So I like to get it on there as fast as possible and get out of it, saving a few details for the end and call it a day. But everybody works a little different, I guess.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So,
I've noticed your style has sort of an illustrative style to it. Do you have an illustrative background?
I was a sign painter for like 35 years.
Oh, you were? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that
Yeah.
would explain some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a lot of sign painting myself. I did a lot of it in college. Me and my pottery teacher were the only sign painters in Warrensburg, Missouri.
Gotcha. Well, Spencer's got a little sign painting background too, and
He does.
so I think it's kind of interesting. I think as I go through you meet people, of course, out on the trail and everything, and you start asking them questions, and a lot of them have got a sign painting background of some sort, men and women. So I just find it kind of interesting that transition seems to happen more than I thought. But it does I find it gives me an edge with my brush.
Sure.
Of course, I've used a flat brush, a quill that turns into a flat brush a lot. So I gravitate towards using a flat brush, and it covers a lot of ground quickly for me. So I like that.
Right, right.
But trying to transition, use a little bit round brush too, a little bit more, gives me another texture.
Yeah.
So.
Very good. Yeah, when I do oil painting, I've almost do almost exclusively use a flat brush um, until I get to maybe the very end and use or might need like if I'm doing portraits or something, do a long pointy, round, like maybe for, uh, almost like a liner or something like that. Sometimes I bust one of those out, but um, I've been tempted to start using round brushes again because I've seen some artists out there, do some really nice things with, round brushes, and I've really gotten out of the habit of using round brushes, and I think I'm going to start using them more.
Yeah, Jamie and I were out painting the other day, and I used a flat brush quite a bit, but painting didn't work out so well, so I brought it home, and I'm kind of reworking it now. It's sitting right next to me. I'm worked on it this morning a little bit, but I noticed when I get to my like the sky holes in the tree, which is a nice place to, especially when it's out and it's all wet. I'm sure you've done this. You take a round brush and you can mix up some sky color and just kind of pop it in there when it's not there. It's hard to do with a flat brush and not get a point or something weird looking, non-organic.
Right.
So I just figure there's a place for every kind of brush. I just haven't exposed it yet for myself, so
Yeah.
I'm still stuck on the flat brush quite a bit. But I like what it does, and it moves fast for me, so I like that.
Flat brushes are really, I like them in watercolor. I've gotten away from them, but I've used them for years, Larry. And you just get some really neat shapes. And I remember at Steelville, I believe it was, Lisa Ober was the judge for one day. And I remember she gave me some award over there, and she was commenting on the flat brush strokes that I had in there, just that chisel end of the flat brush. She said, "I'm not sure how you're doing that." She said, "But I really like it." And so they are a really good brush, good brush to use.
Well, I think if you look at a lot of watercolors, they don't. I mean, Niall, you're mostly an oil painter. You get the advantage of your brush strokes showing.
Right.
Which adds a lot of character and texture to your paintings. But with watercolors, most of our claim to fame is a lot of blending and smooth textures, which we don't get a lot of brush strokes. So when I get to a non-essential thing like, I don't know, a row of background trees or something, I like to just hammer them in there with a flat brush and leave them square kind of on the end. It just, I don't know, to me, I think it's cool.
What kind of hammer do you use? Ball peen or claw?
You just paint your picture. Niall and I are talking here, okay?
All right. Well, like I said, I'm going to start in with just popping in some darks here, there, some lights. Again, if you've got your photo, you can look at it. On top of the air conditioning unit, here's some light, and there's some over here, and of course on the tops of these cars back here. So, and also, you remember me talking about this? I said it was kind of a patinaed copper up here. I'm gonna grab some phthalo green and just put a little slight cast over the top of it, because I think it will benefit the picture overall. When I'm painting and teaching, I will say one thing and then often do something else. So if you follow me very long, get used to it. I'm not a person of my word. Not intentionally, just by accident, I guess. Okay, mixing up some dark phthalo green, alizarin crimson, and let's see here. There's a window right here.
That green really gave it kind of a patina, didn't it?
Yeah, phthalo's great color for that. And then I can go in here and kind of clean that up just a little bit. Again, I'm just looking at my photograph, and then I look down at the picture and see what it needs. Now, again, it's interesting. What I'm seeing on my monitor shows so much more detailed. It just basically exaggerates everything. Like this area here looks much lighter than it really is. Consequently, these look much darker. And in reality, that's not popping out quite as much as what it looks like on my monitor. but your monitor may be totally different too. So, okay, just put a little key dark in behind those houses. Grab a little bit of orange now, and then I'm just going to soften that up. And what that does, that'll give it kind of a greenish cast, and again, suggesting some tree shapes and things like that. You just want to kind of tuck them in there. There's a neat little shape in the photograph right here, like that. You put a eave under that house. Get some more alizarin crimson. Come up here. There we go. Now what I'm seeing, this is starting to layer. You know, the foliage is starting to reseed, and you got varieties of light and dark in there, and little varieties of color, which adds interest to it. Carry that back up in there. Okay. Same thing down here. I need to amp up the darks down in here a little bit. Because that's what's going to make the highlights on these cars really pop out. They don't have to be, you know, I mean, all I got to do is basically just get some darks down in there. And that will give that kind of, like for my eye right now, look at that. Stop it. Stop running. You can finger paint too if you want. That dark right there just pulls me right down the road. And if I play these darks off there properly, that will be the overall effect of it. And I think I say this almost every time I'm taping myself or video, and I'm painting almost vertical right now. And it's a little bit of a challenge. I mean, I paint that way most of the time in watercolor, but if you're not used to it, it's going to be kind of a challenge. So if you want to paint flat, or, you know, put a 2x4 underneath your painting, give it a little bit of angle to make the water move, that's fine. But you don't have to think I'm going to be just like Spencer and paint vertical. If you're not ready for that, don't punish yourself. Larry's been trying to be like me for years, and he's not got there yet. Right, Larry? I know you heard me, Larry.
I did.
He's trying to think of a comeback, right?
Oh, there's no comeback to that.
You're not the comeback kid?
No. When I went to Tony Couch's seminar, of course, he painted full sheet every day, and he painted vertical. You know,
Did he really?
Everybody could see, obviously.
Yep.
But he always, every day when he started, too, he'd wet his paper down pretty good. He was using Arches 140.
Mm-hmm.
Then he'd wipe it down and dry it. And he used, like those big paper clips, that you squeeze together.
Bulldogs?
Yeah, and he'd put those on all four. Or for a while, he didn't do anything. It just stuck to a piece of masonite, and then he'd get about half hour into it or so, and he'd say, well, the paper's starting to dry, so he'd put those big clamps on it and just continue to paint the whole thing. It was pretty amazing, and he didn't have any hard edge lines that he didn't want to be in there at all.
Well, something that I had forgotten until I set this up today on this acrylic glazing. If you wet that paper, well, even not wetting it, I just set that paper down in the acrylic glazing, and the static cling that is in that just sucks it right down to it. So if you wet this paper before you start painting on it, you don't need to tape it or do anything or clip it. It will just glue itself down to that. And as long as it's wet enough, it'll hold. Knock that corner off of that. you know, I'll say it one more time. You don't have to put, you just want to give the viewer enough information to make them believe they're looking at cars. They don't need to know the make and the model of it, or if it's a truck or a car even. They just want to know that there's some vehicles there. Kind of soften that edge a little bit. I like that. Okay, so going back to what I mentioned earlier, you've got these two stoplights here in the photograph. I'm looking at them. They're actually red, and then there's two red things over here, which I may have covered them up. I don't know, but I'm wondering if green, you know, some of that green there wouldn't be more appropriate in there, or if I went with a really bright red, like here's the red. I don't know if that would pop better. Let me get that a little wetter. Something like that. Or if I did something like that right there. Anybody got a thought? There's pure phthalo right there. See, that's just it's the green that you see in the traffic lights.
What's going to be, you know, you got warm and basically cool or neutral there up against what color background?
Well, you got this dark violet here, and I would probably go with like this value right in here that you see, kind of a mid range, just enough of a greenish tint to it.
Yeah, I think I like that too, kiddo.
Let's give it a whirl. We can only mess it up, right? Pop that in there. I'm going to try to leave a white center to it. Yeah, not very exciting, but I'll get some white paint out. That's why they make white paint. Did you know that? Okay, I'm going to grab some more of that orange and go around this headlight here. Get my chest back out of the way. Make the streets wet here.
What brand was that orange?
That is Core, Q-O-R. It's made by Golden. It's Core Transparent Pyrrole Orange. P-Y-R-O. That's good. It's got two R's or two L's in it. Now, there are other companies that make it. Winsor Newton makes one, but I have not found one that works near as good as Core's. And I'm not usually brand specific, but in that particular one, I am. Let's see if we can put just a hint of somebody driving that sitting in there. If it doesn't work out, I can always paint over it. Okay, down underneath here. And then remember I said leave that little gap of light right there. Okay, that's kind of just recessing back into the scene real nice. I like that. Got the side window there. Mirror or something coming off of it.
Spencer, at any time did you, when you were setting this up, looking at it, did you kind of feel like there were things that were more important than other things? Not so much a focal point, but maybe things that just, you know, were just fillers or just taking up space?
And did I edit them out?
Well, not necessarily, but just maybe downplay their amount of detail that's in them and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I would say these houses up here fall into that category. I want a suggestion of them up there, but I don't want them to be too prominent. Uh, and I don't feel that they are. Just looking at them here. Matter of fact, I see one thing I would like to do, and that is this house here that has a set of two, a set of two windows. In the photograph, these windows don't exist, and I think that if I leave that roof line alone, I think that'll be a plus or positive, if you will, because it kind of throws it off balance rather than being so symmetrical, like that right there. You know, and then you can decide, okay, are these screaming for too much attention, and so just knock them down a little bit more, get rid of some of the stuff that's catching your eye. This house here.
I always liked the Richard Schmidt. He would use the term "quiet it down."
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
kind of quiet down.
Really, that's what's going on. It's asking for attention. You know, it's waving its arms at you. Hey, hey, look at me, and you don't want that. Okay, so I'm gonna try something here. This is usually where I get myself in trouble. I get an idea that seems to be really good. I'm gonna blue this up just a little bit here. That pushes it back.
Yeah, that really helped.
And for me, and I know all of you, most of you, if not all of you, that'd be the right way to say it. I know that you have painted for quite a bit, and you have all different levels of experience at this, but you understand a lot about it. And what I would tell you, you get to a point like where I'm at in this painting. Now you start out with this plan. You have an idea where you want it to go. When you get to this point, now you have to maybe make changes. You have to do things differently than what you had initially planned on. Just like I was going to leave that alone, but just looking in the photograph and looking at it, I think it's too yellow. It's too warm. It needs to be cooled down. So I just glazed some blue over it, and it helps. And I think these guys back here, they're farther back. They're probably the same light as this. So if this is closer, I'm going to see this is going to appear a little brighter than those. So that tells me, hey, I need to brush a little blue over those too. And the fact that I got away with it here tells me I can probably get away with it up here too. And I've got pretty thin down water. No, let me back up and rephrase that. I've got pretty thin down paint. I don't think you can thin water, can you? There we go. Yeah. Okay, so really this, I guess, becomes about the street just pulling you down, and then you get back in here and you can explore and look around. All right, let me break out the white, see what we can do. My microphone leash will let me step over here. And I would also say this, after I'm done, turn the camera off and set this aside and look at it, I may decide, oh, I need to change this or that, or put a little more dark over here. And, it's certainly allowable. Okay, so let me set my phone down. Okay, this is Daniel Smith Titanium White. And I typically just take my brush and stick it down in there like that. And I get a nice white on there, but it's probably a little too bright. I'm going to test it out on this car right over here. If it's too bright, I'll tint it with probably some blue. let's just see what it's going to do here. Let me bring my photo back up. So get back onto there. So as I go right there, I think that's going to be okay. I don't think it's too intense. So I'm just looking around for areas to apply that.
Spencer, is that just white watercolor or is it white gouache?
It's white watercolor.
Okay.
Yeah, right there. Daniel Smith titanium white watercolor.
Gotcha.
I don't use Daniel Smith a lot, but I really like the white here that they have. Okay, now here's the, see a little highlight there. That reads pretty good, I think. Okay, and then each of these cars back here gets a little touch of it. See what this microphone's, I can see it out of the corner of my eye coming into my monitor, and it really aggravates me. I'm going to make these larger up here. That's those lights. And I might just give them a pass and let them just be a light spot instead of trying to make them believable as a traffic light. I think that's reads pretty good there. Oops, sorry. Need to tighten that down. Light up there on the edge of that building. And then this one here could have a little glow or something. So I don't know. There's a lot more I could do down in here, but if I noodle that too much, right now you know it's an RV sitting there, and it doesn't really need any more. I do like this, what I've got here. I'm just going to leave that alone. I'm pretty happy with it.
Spencer, have you removed your
Masking fluid?
masking fluid yet?
I did. When I went over there and dried it the last time, I just had it in a few spots right here, and I just took my finger and rubbed it out.
Okay, I thought I missed that part.
Yeah. No, I took it off while I was over there because it has to be really dry before you do that. So if this is damp, and that's not blood, that's paint from there. But if this is really damp across here, maybe dry, you can touch it, it doesn't smear, but it's damp, and you start rubbing that, it's going to take and smear that paint into the white that you were trying to preserve, and so that'll bite you. I always like to do is talk about my regrets, basically, in something like this. This picture, I wish I had done it. It's, I don't know, I'm going to say 10 by 10 maybe. I'd like to have done it like a 16 by 16 or something, so I could climb inside here and really develop some of the details. It's right now it just feels so small. I can't give it what I really want to give it. But anyway, that's, you have regrets with every painting, and I don't mind sharing those regrets with you. I think that's beneficial if we know that everybody has stuff that doesn't turn out for them. I mean, I'm not saying this didn't turn out. I'm just saying if I did it over, I'd do a few things different.
Is that a standard masking tape, or do you use a special tape?
Nope, this is Sherwin-Williams. I'll get my elbow out of the way of the camera there. Okay, this is what I want to show you here. When you're pulling tape off, you pull it up like this. Pull away from your painting. Don't pull into the painting like that. Pull away from it. Because if you pull into it, it can tear the paper. That has happened before. Always when you got a really nice painting too. Okay, so there is the finished product, and I'll go ahead and sign it here in just a little bit after I go off camera. But I think it turned out pretty good. Pretty fair representation of what's in the photo. Scoot that over a little bit.
I think it turned out great, Spencer. I really especially like I like the value of that you kept on the Warrior there, the van.
Right there.
Yeah, and I like how it's kind of an important vehicle. You know, it's larger and it's more distinct. You can tell that it's an RV, and so it's kind of dominant in the foreground. But I like how you darken the right side of the windshield and let it kind of merge with the background, so it's not kind of a encapsulated shape. It blends with the background, and that really, to me, is what really makes that real successful as a design element.
Yeah, I was happy that I saw that and I did it. I agree with you. It just kind of disappears into the background. It's there, but it's not like it's cut and pasted in there. It looks like it belongs.
Right. And then I really like, I think the cards you handle real well. I mean, and I like that white building on the left that you put that blue wash over.
Right there?
Yeah, I think it relates to the van, or the RV, and it's I don't know. I just think the balance of the values and everything are real nice, and just the overall looseness of the whole painting. I'm kind of glad you did it that size. You mentioned going larger, that you could have gone into some more detail, but I really love the sort of the looseness and kind of the playfulness of the whole painting, rather than a lot of detail. I mean, I know you're not trying to be detailed, but you know what I mean.
Right, right. Yeah, I think when I say I'm sitting here squinting at it, I think it reads real well. In general, I'm really pleased with the outcome on it, and I do agree with what you're saying, Niall. I see it and I agree with it. This value here bounces to the same value over here, which bounces to the same value up in here. So it kind of, and even the street is pretty close to the same value. So it just kind of pulls you around in there. Then these little oddball shapes up here that mean really nothing, they are just little nice accents that allow you to explore, find something a little more in the picture than what you initially thought was there.
I like too the composition. If you look at the RV and bounce a line over to the building over to the left, then the line bounces back to the spiral in the background, you get a nice little triangular composition that just really works together good. There you go. I just saw that just as Niall was talking about it.
Okay.
That's really, I don't know if you intended that or not, but it really works.
I wouldn't say I intended. I mean, I stayed pretty faithful to the design and the photograph. I guess you all can see that in there. So, I tried to stay faithful to that. But I'm just a sucker for streets or roads that they're so easy. They just pull you down. They're a good design, and then everything just kind of stair steps and squeezes down to the back. But I think this spire or steeple sticking up right here, adds a nice, strong, dramatic element, and it's probably mimicked in this turret on this side. Although this is lesser, it still supports that over there. So.
Something I've seen some of the painters too do for windshields is use like a viridian, darken that viridian down and go across the windshield. That gives it kind of a greenish cast.
Okay.
Or a blue, kind of makes it look like it's reflecting off of the sky or something, which is kind of cool.
Huh. Never thought about that. But yeah, I could see that because I think windshields, typically all auto glass has got a little bit of a greenish tint to it, probably to knock down glare and such. So yeah, that's a good little trick.
I like the sort of ambiguity, I guess, or kind of that vague quality of that mid-tone value in the center of the painting, and how it kind of bleeds over to the right, and then almost it's not too far off even on the value of the tower. It kind of like, it lets the imagination sort of fill in the blanks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, rather than delineating all the trees and the different layers.
Yeah, and that is a really good statement that everybody needs to pick up on, is that if you go giving too much information in there, you use the word ambiguity or ambiguous. If you leave this just kind of subtle and maybe color shifts, it's not even so much a value shift, it's just color shift. This is kind of orangish gray over here, violet, and it goes to kind of a yellowish. Remember, I put the yellows into that violet there. It stays the same value, but it shifts in color, and so it adds interest in there. You know that these are trees. You know by the color and the shape that that's brick, but there is no line that separates them. They just morph one into the other. And then you got these little roof lines popping out. That tells you all the information you really need to know, that, hey, this is a street scene with a bluff there, and there's homes up on it and everything. But until then, thanks a lot, everybody. I'll let you go. This is going to run out here in just a minute anyway, so
Right.
I'll let you know about next week, okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Spencer. See you next week.
All right. Bye-bye.